So as what I was hoping to do is to basically spend a few minutes on setting the scene. The new intro or the new people, quick intro, we already went through. Dolce and Bjarke had a chance to introduce themselves. And then what I was hoping to do is to ask each of you, after I've done my opening and set the scene a little bit, to, if you think about Agile or deciding on what to build, what are we going to build to put into the project? My hope was that you would each share one thing in Agile that you would like to keep, specifically focus on deciding what to build. One thing in Agile coming to deciding on what to build, which could be requirements or hypotheses or all kinds of other things that you want to get rid of, that you think is not working. And one thing that you would like to see added that currently isn't present in the typical Agile methodologies. Does that make sense? So one thing to keep, one thing to remove, one thing to add. That's what I'm going to ask each of you to share with me after we've gone through the presentation. And Bjarke and Dolce, I will set a little bit of the scene so you have a bit of an understanding of where we are from. Some of you that were here last week will see some slides that you saw last week as well, but I hope that that's okay. And once each of you has done that, I'm hoping that we can have some discussion, and then we move into a retrospective and next steps, because I'm trying to figure out, what I'm trying to do is to have a little bit of a community around this topic, trying to understand this better, but the community, you have to feel like this is adding value to your lives as well. Yeah. I shared this last week as well, but for me, digitalization is basically the transition from the value delivery pattern on the left, which is I buy a car, I use the car for several years, the car gets a little bit worse every day I use it, and then I buy the next car, to the model on the right, where basically every product, whether it's a medical product from Getinge, or it's a software product, or it is another type of product like Spotify, for instance, because I remember that Lena was at Spotify at some point when she was still young and innocent, if I'm not mistaken. We're moving towards a model that is we see on the right, where basically the day the customer gets the product, it is the best we can build it, but it is also the worst it will be throughout the rest of its economic life. And from that point on, the product will get a little bit better every day we use it by new software deployment, DevOps, new machine learning models, MLOps, perhaps periodically upgrading electronics, or perhaps occasionally replacing mechanics. That's the model that I see that many of the software-centered companies are moving towards, even if not everyone is there yet in their respective industry. The traditional model has been, we build what it says in the specification, and then we assume that if we build what it said in the spec, we have delivered value to customers. And I believe that this is a complete misunderstanding and a fallacy of many of the traditional approaches, including the different agile methods like SAFe and related, because our research and research by others shows that somewhere between half and 2/3 of all the features in a typical system are never used, or used so seldomly that they shouldn't have been built in the first place. And this is our own research with a company in the Gothenburg region that wanted to stay anonymous when they saw the data. They basically we see exactly the same pattern here. Some customers, some features are used all the time, some features are used occasionally. Many features are never used or hardly ever used and shouldn't have been built. And these are features, just to remind everyone, this is not the airbag feature in your car that you hope will never be activated, because that would mean you would be in an accident. These are features where some product managers stood hopping up and down saying that unless we build this thing, we're all going to go to hell in a handbasket. Yeah, so that's where we're coming from. And then I shared the 3-layer product model: layer of commodity, layer of differentiation, the layer of innovation. And our data shows that somewhere between 70 and 90% of all resources in a typical software development company go to commodity functionality, stuff that no customer gives a flying hoot about. Yeah, so the current state of R&D, as far as I can determine, and again, for those of you that were here last week, this is a little bit of a refresher, but it's not new. 7 to 9 out of every 10 in R&D work on commodity stuff that no customer cares about. It should just work. And the 1 or 2 that build new stuff get it wrong half the time. So in my view, the effectiveness of R&D today in most companies, and if I say effectiveness is the amount of value you create for every unit of R&D that you invest, is simply atrocious. It's awful. And I feel that we need to move to something else. And what is that something else? That's exactly what I want to talk with all of you about. I already raised, and Bjarke was referring to this, the model that I presented last time, and that also went out on LinkedIn and in my newsletter, from traditional, that we all understand doesn't work and is really not the thing, and it still happens a lot. I mean, if you go to SAP Defense, they write a contract, they have 12,000 requirements, they build the 12,000 requirements, they get it ticked off by the customer, and they get paid. That's their model. Then we have Agile, which many of you are either applying in your day-to-day work, or you are making a living as an Agile coach or something like that, because I noticed that there were a number of people that were earning their money in applying Agile practices, which is all around individuals and interactions, working software, customer collaboration, responding to change, etc. To what I believe are the key elements of the next paradigm, which is much more about architecture and decoupling teams. There is nothing more expensive than coordinating through meetings, through people talking to each other. It's much cheaper to coordinate through architecture. Operational software that is tracked in real time, so we get data and we know that the software is doing what it's supposed to do or not in real time. Predicting stakeholder needs. Agile, in my view, is very reactive, trying to respond to what customers say that they want or what happens in the ecosystem. I want to be proactive. You don't want to wait until customers ask for something. You want to make your customers, I mean, there's a great American saying that says, make your kids want what you're getting them for Christmas. I'm not sure if you've heard that one, but the idea basically is you have to make your customers want what you want to build for them. And then finally, rather than setting a requirement, we believe much more in hypotheses and experimentation. So that's at least what I believe the next paradigm. That's just some of the elements that I believe the next paradigm has to include. But as one of my favorite sayings is, I've been married long enough to know how often I'm wrong. I am organizing these meetings because I'm trying to understand to what extent how are you thinking about these kind of questions? Yeah, so this is where I wanted to, I'm going to skip this one, but now very quickly for Bjarke and for Dulce. I want to shift the focus from only focusing on how are we going to build this to including what we're going to build and why should we build it in the first place. And from a focus on efficiency, how do we crank out as many features per time unit as possible, to effectiveness, how do we create as much customer value as possible per time R&D unit. From talking about value, I was at this customer last week and they were shouting that they need this feature because otherwise, instead of talking about it, it's about measure frequency of use, measure the value that the customer gets out of this stuff. Reacting to change, to being proactive and listening to what customers say they want, to measuring what customers actually do in practice. I mean, for those of you that have a little bit of management literature, there's this beautiful thing between espoused theory, this is what customers say or what people say they do, versus theory and use. This is what people do in reality and in practice. Now, and those things I think have to be separated. So what I was hoping to do, and I will stop sharing my screen at this point so that we give each of you a chance. One thing in Agile that you would like to keep when it comes to deciding on what to build. One thing in Agile you want to get rid of. And one thing that you would like to add. And remember, we are recording, so all your words will be shared with the world, if that makes you careful. And also be careful if you work for a company that you don't talk too specific about things in your company that you don't want to have on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Let's put it like that. Yeah? That's where I'm coming from.
Is it okay with some questions before we start?
Absolutely not. No, I'm joking. Go ahead, Dulce.
I'm thinking about what you have as the next paradigm. For me, that's still Agile. And then I'm thinking about the thing you're saying that we shouldn't just run after what customer says, right? But we know that. So is it more like, I'm thinking about Netflix, Google, how they work in order to actually test new functionalities to see will it stick or will it not stick. that's what you're a little bit.
Well, what I'm trying, yes, we
Yeah.
have. I mean, one of our former PhD students is now in the at Microsoft in the data science team there. I've worked with Booking quite a bit. We've been in touch with quite a few other SaaS companies. Spotify is one of them. A/B testing is a very typical way of as cheaply, quickly, and fast figuring out if something should be built or not. But I don't want to bias the conversation into everyone should do A/B testing. I'm trying to figure out what are good mechanisms for deciding what to build. You look really angry at me, Delcia. Did I hurt your feelings?
No, I'm listening. I'm just, I'm not angry. I'm just listening. I'm thinking about patterns, right? One is trying to see the patterns to better understand what the actually core issue is that you're trying to resolve. And one thing that I'm struggling with is that many of the Agile practices is like the core issue is having management not understanding what agility is all about. And that causes a lot of shortcuts or misusing or misapplying a lot of the Agile practices, and then end up missing the whole thing. Yeah. That's my struggle.
I'm going to be devil's advocate. I mean, you're not Swedish, so you're okay with me going devil's advocate, right? Yeah, okay, good. I'm happy to hear. Agile was introduced, or the manifesto was published in 2001.
Yep.
If we have been trying for the better part of 23 years, and it still hasn't gotten traction in the places where it should have gotten traction, like management layers, and we had people from SAP and from Volvo here last week, rather than saying, let's try just a little harder and make sure that we can make it work, I at least want to entertain the hypothesis that maybe it isn't the right answer. Maybe something is missing or something is there that shouldn't be there, but that we need something else. I mean, I have a long email from the Volvo gentleman that we had on the phone in the meeting last week. I had a separate chat with a lady from SAP that was in the meeting last week. I will not mention the names. Yep. And it's pretty clear that the paradigm just doesn't fit what they are trying to accomplish. And that's what I'm trying to get to. And rather than saying, we just have to try harder, I at least want to explore the hypothesis that maybe we need something else, or something better, or something more, or something that's partially overlapping, but not the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do understand what you're saying. I'm just thinking about that in order to accommodate what you have as the next paradigm, it means that people need to learn how to design, how to slice their product in such a way that you actually can accommodate what you have there. Yeah. So it's a lot about having a certain logic, right?
Yes.
And also have some kind of permission to be able to design the product in such a way. And another thing that I have been reacting quite a lot is regarding all this AI, where everything is data driven. But the thing is that if you don't have good quality on your data, you will still not get the right patterns. You will not see the right patterns, right? So you'll still be able to run in the wrong direction. So that's a little bit where,
yeah. I fully agree, Delcia. I mean, there's a saying in programming that says you can do spaghetti programming in any programming language, which I'm sure you've all heard. And I definitely want to stay away from that. So any other questions you had, or can I let in Richard?
No, I have no more questions.
Okay, Richard.
All right, I didn't want to steal the show, but I have an idea and a suggestion of how to home in on the main question here that you're raising, Jan, to look at the next paradigm of possible continuation beyond today's Agile. And the suggestion is this: let's try to distinguish between one, failed Agile implementation and all the reasons and consequences of how to deal with that, and the inadequacies or shortcomings of the Agile manifesto. But distinguishing those two, I think that we can home in on the second part, which I think is what you are looking at. Could it possibly be that in all the mess of Agile is not working, there are two sides of the coin: the failed implementation of the said manifesto and the shortcomings of the manifesto?
You're spot on, Richard. I mean,
Right.
I have seen so many poorly performed attempts at going agile that didn't work out for all the reasons that, among others, Dolce was raising. That's not what I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is there is something inherently missing in the paradigm if after 23 years it still isn't as widespread as I expected it to be. And if that is the case, I'm trying to understand what that is. So the plan is to go through the different stages in the life cycle. Today, my hope was to focus on, because we only have 40 minutes left, to focus on how to decide what to build. Yeah, traditionally it was requirements. There are different approaches. Dolce was already on the hypotheses and A/B testing. I don't want to jump to that conclusion, but I want to hear from different people how they feel about this. And I'm trying to figure out, Lena, if I know I'm looking for a volunteer. Can I appoint you as the volunteer, or is that too rude?
No. Shoot.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the three questions you had, what we want to remove, and what I'd like to keep. But like we've been talking a lot, and what I'm thinking is that the Agile Manifesto and where we have been, that's on the development teams, and that's kind of working. But as you say, it doesn't fit for managers and maybe business or whatever. And of course it doesn't, because this was designed from a developing team's perspective. And now we have to take the next step, and now we have to like move on and see how we can make this even better. So I think that's where we are, and that's quite natural. That's you can't take the whole company at once, but you have to try and see what works, and that's what the experiments has been. And of course, for 23 years, if what was true in 2001 still is true, then I think you were wrong, because there's so many things that have happened during this time. So so that's like Slack, for example, we can like talk to the whole world within seconds, and everybody knows it without writing emails as we did then. So so much technology has happened. And then one other thing that comes to my mind when we talk about what should we develop, and I think one thing that is I feel strongly about, that is taking that decision off a business and into somebody who loves the product.
So you mean it should be a product manager, or it
yes.
should not be on the team, but it should be in a product manager? How do you think about it?
So not business. So not the business side, not because they, and this is my opinion.
No, I mean, we're all having our opinions. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, and I also say I've been in sales, I've been in marketing, so I'm talking to myself now as well. But in sales, we often make very short-term decisions. So like what's good for me now, and also the customer who is yelling the highest is the one that I want to please. Or it could be a customer that just wants to put a lot of money into the development, even if that development isn't what the product needs, but it's what this biggest customers of ours needs for now. And I want to shift that. And also like for sales, it's like what they sell is what they get in their pocket the next month. So of course they will sell whatever brings most money into their own pockets.
It's funny how it works, huh? People have a self-interest for some reason.
Yes, exactly. And so that's I don't think it's a good thing for the product. And also they have the interests of the customers, and they think a lot about the customer. But as you said, we don't want to develop what the customer tells us they want to develop. We need to be before the customer. We need to understand what they want next year, or as you said, what does our children want for Christmas? So we can't be here and now because it takes some time to develop a product. We have to be in the future, like looking ahead and understanding. And the customer, like, as you said, I was at Spotify. There were things that we developed there that nobody had asked for because they don't go around and think about it. But then when we introduced it, they're like, wow, this is the best thing ever happened.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly where you want to get to, right?
Yes, that's where I want to get to. So what should we build? Well, that should be somebody who cares for the product, loves the product, and wants to develop the product, and don't have the short-term goals for it, but have like much more a vision for the product.
Good.
That's where I would like to go. Yeah.
Thanks, Lena. Bjarke, even though it's the first time that you are in this meeting, you are a chief architect after all. So we're expecting words of wisdom from you too after Lena.
Yeah, and I actually want to speak into a bit about what you said, Lena. So what I'm seeing is we do have the business aspect, like constantly messing up what we're trying to achieve when working Agile, right? So they have customers and they have. And what I'm seeing in our part of the world or in my organization is trying out things like innovation sprints, for example, something where you actually want to connect not only the sales but also the salespeople, the business owners. You actually want to connect a lot of different people to actually get the good results. So and what I'm feeling a bit is that people need a what's in it for me. They need to know, and I think that is maybe if I should try to answer one of the questions is what is it that I want to add? Then I want to add a more holistic what's in it for me. Normally it's something that an R&D organization initiates, or we want to be agile because it brings us some benefits. Mm-hmm. But typically where we get the most benefit is when you get a successful cross-silo implementation of Agile, so where it spans the full value chain of being Agile, so that you're able to shift into a better direction quite fast and rapidly. So that is something that I would like to add, because that's not very clear in the implementations I've seen so far. Speaking a bit into one of the things you also mentioned, having a decoupling of teams is something that we are also experimenting with quite good results, actually. But it also comes with a heavy startup cost, because you need all the technical parts to be ready also when you start it. And that's the fewest companies that actually are able to produce such a platform where you can actually do the testing, do the measurements, getting the data back, getting something that will bring you the knowledge that you're asking about. It's a comprehensive platform that you need to purchase, build, implement in your organization. So that's actually a big question for me is how do we make that available to even smaller organizations?
Right. Good. Thank you, Bjarke. I was thinking we'd go to Bulgaria. Theodora is actually doing a study right now on this very topic, Theodora. So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Prioritization. If I can start from the statistics you cited, I use this statistic in my trainings when I talk about transition from traditional to agile, and that agile tries to solve this problem, because working incremental and iterative, we expect to implement this feedback cycle. But unfortunately, 23 years later, the situation is the same, and agile couldn't solve this problem.
Right.
And in my opinion, what I noticed in practice is the problem is in incremental delivery. Teams or product owners don't have the skills to slice properly the requirements and to deliver small pieces. And after that, measurement. We have to measure the results. This is, in my opinion. And something that is not related to requirements and prioritization, but if I can add something in Agile, it will be more roles, and especially when I work with teams, I always want to have technical lead, and in Agile we don't have this official role.
Right.
This is not related to requirements, but yes.
No, but I can see where you're getting at, and that's great. Thank you very much. So I'm trying to do boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. So I was looking at maybe Ula, you are starting to look a little sleepy. So I thought we'd ask you to jump in.
Thank you. So one thing that I think is really good and can be expanded outside of the development team is the pull mechanism. So to use that wider, to not flood the system with requirements that we don't have time with anyway.
And then when you say pull, what you mean is there is a backlog, but the team can pull the highest priority thing off the backlog and start to work on it in detail, but not forced a bunch of stuff down their throat in every sprint.
Yeah, and that could maybe be generalized even to the stages before that you take it one at a time.
Right. Yeah.
One practice, so I'm coming from the development side, and sometimes we get into these discussions about estimates, and we have this situation. Okay, we cannot estimate at all, or we need a detailed plan. So I think we need some kind of middle ground there, that we need to be able to provide some kind of input for the bang for the buck discussion, and so that we can make the trade-offs in a collaborative way. If I'm thinking of something to add, I'm maybe more on a technical side, but I think it's important to keep or even grow the technical and engineering excellence. And for instance, one practice in hardware companies could be to have a more simulation of hardware and those, so that we validate technical feasibility and maybe even business feasibility before we build the stuff. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Ula. Now it's a girl again. Dulce, you want to go? You want to go next? You still look angry, Dulce. I'm trying to interrupt your non-verbal communication here.
No. Just thinking. I actually don't really have anything that I would like to remove. One thing that I think is missing, or it's not missing, it's there, but I'm thinking about culture. I don't like more rules. I don't like more regulations. I think it's more about the mindset. And I actually would like to move this back to 91 with the Agile enterprise concept. So there has been a concept taking the whole bigger picture. And looking into that different 4 components, I think that you still could take it from there instead. That's my point of view.
And the Agile enterprise concept, did you say 91?
Yes, 91. Yes, correct. So it's an outcome from Action Research in the US, sponsored by Department of Defense in the US.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's not for software. It was actually for manufacturing companies that had lost their innovation capability.
Wow.
So what I'm hearing here is, if you don't really work with the mindset, we can just keep on adding roles and descriptions and still not get anywhere. So it's a lot of my mindset, according to me.
And I agree, and I think that's also why I'm looking for a paradigm shifts, because a paradigm basically is a mindset, a set of norms and values and patterns of behavior. Now I have two guys left. It is Tommy and Rikard. And Rikard already had a chance to say something, so I will ask Tommy to jump in.
So let's see if you can hear me, guys. Yep, good. Kind of got lost with the three questions, but if we would start with anything that I would completely like to remove, I would say as well, I don't think of any, not taken from the manifesto as such. However, there could be a long dialogue about why over 20 years it's not been working still. I would say what I've seen is that it works perfectly fine with dedicated, knowledgeable people in a small scale. And the problem comes with the scale-up perspective. Maybe natural, of course. And I think already by then, people are not committed to the same things because people are driven by different incentives. That's a problem that I would like to get rid of. That we would basically be measured is the wrong word, but anyhow, we could be perceived in the same way in an organization because we should be able to work together towards the same goal. That's basically it. And I do believe that when we touch upon the management side, can be a bit unfair, being manager myself and so on. But I mean, there's so many different levels of management. And obviously, the higher up you go, the further away you come from the technology as such. And I think that we kind of lose the connection between the pure development side and the management side. I don't have one crisp answer to deal with that, but I think that's a major problem that I would like to discuss even more. There are some things. The third question, what was that, John, and the rest?
One thing you would like to add.
Okay. I think, I mean, we touch upon the culture and the mindset and so on, but it's seldom that we are in meetings in different organizations with different levels of hierarchy in the same way. Sure, there might be a town hall meeting or whatever held by the CEO and everyone is there, but we're not discussing the same topic in all different layers of the organizational hierarchy. That I think is a problem as well, or at least a challenge. I think there should be some way representatives from all layers of it in order to achieve something together.
Yeah. Really good point, Tommy. The two things that I picked up that I want to reinforce, if you allow me. The notion of Agile working at the team level, but having difficulty scaling, is something that I recognize very well. And if you read the manifesto and the background behind the manifesto, there was one development team working directly with a customer. That is a quite easy way of doing things, right? I mean, it is a lot of problems occur when you go up the scaling hierarchy. The second topic that Helena and I have done a lot of research in, and Helena, you're next, is around how do you align organizations around one set goal. And we have used the notion of value modeling for this. Some of you may have heard the term North Star metric, where a whole company is organized around one KPI that everyone is supposed to contribute to. Yeah, so one of the companies in the logistics space that I worked with has basically chosen as the one-star metric ton kilometers. They are providing logistics services, and the only thing they care about is to move as many tons for as many kilometers as possible, because that is their business model. So they've organized everything, sales, R&D, support, customer service, everything is around that one KPI. And that's a mechanism for aligning people around one North Star metric, I think. So that's at least an interesting way to think about it. Helena and then Rikard. I'd love to hear, Helena, what you're thinking about now that you've been listening in on these people.
Yes, super interesting. So I will try to summarize. There is so much that you could actually think of here, but what I really like is, of course, to me, the sprint model, the short, whatever they mean, but the iteration, the incremental,
even if difficult, trying to slice things into at least smaller parts. That's what I think everyone benefits from, and that we have actually been quite able to do, at least in some organizations to some extent. So that would be the thing that I would really want to keep. And then what I would want to remove, I feel sometimes that there is in Agile this one size fits all kind of problem. So it gets really heavy on process. Agile becomes almost a goal in itself, rather than a means to an end where an organization consider where do we actually benefit from these types of practices. If you have a one size fits all perception or approach, I think that is partly what causes the featureitis problem that we saw in the graph. Because then the teams focus on cranking out all those features as fast as they can, and they lose out on what it was they were supposed to contribute in the first place too. And I think that an additional problem in this one size fits all is that very often organizations tend to treat features as if they were all equally important. So you have Agile teams working on all kinds of different features where I think you would actually benefit from focusing your Agile teams and efforts on those features that by customers are regarded important, differentiating, maybe innovative, but not the commodity stuff. Other teams can work on those, and it maybe doesn't matter too much if the sprint is a little longer. So that would be what I would wish to remove, this one size fits all perception. And then what I would want to add, and this aligns a little bit, I think, with what Bjarke mentioned, I would want to see more of an outcome-based focus, like a business focus, where the cross-functional teams go beyond R&D. And, you know, it has more of a holistic perspective. That's what I would wish for.
It's kind of funny that you're right, talking about all the different features that teams are working on. I'm in the midst of writing a blog post that will come out a few weeks from now. I often try to work a few weeks ahead. And this one has the title, The Vital Few versus the Worthwhile Many. That there are many situations where teams have lots and lots of things to do, and every individual thing is worthwhile in itself, but we fail to actually focus our energy on the vital few, the few things that will really move the needle in a material way. So I think that that's an interesting one. Richard, I hope you didn't mind me putting you last, but you already had a chance to say something. So I want to give everyone equal footing. I hope that's okay with you. But
No
share your
problem.
thoughts.
You know, the last person is the most memorable because that's what you're left with when you're reflecting back. So
with the sweater
for
that you're wearing, you're already memorable. So no worries about that one. So.
Thank you. Well, it's you know, racing for the future. Fast forward.
I saw that.
No, but I think that a lot of good things have been said, and different aspects of the things that I like have been mentioned as well. Of course, the backlog stack approach is really good for, you know, chewing off the journey towards the end product. It's really good for product development, and I think that the original aims for the Agile Manifesto was to propose a way of working and a methodology and so on of product development. But I think that might be the very core of the inadequacies of the Agile Manifesto. It is not enough anymore to have a philosophy and a methodology to develop products. You have to see, as we said it before, beyond that. You have to realize what will deliver value for the customer, and not only today, but beyond today. And what is that science which describes the trying or the exploration of defining and capturing value for tomorrow's customer? It's called innovation science. And I think that is the missing link here that we have been touching a lot upon. It is not enough to have a manifesto describing only how to develop products efficiently. and chew off the journey to that, but you have to have something which is larger. And I'm using the word larger for a reason, because we keep coming back to the fact that we get feedback from industry saying that Agile is good, but it doesn't scale well.
Yeah.
And we throw in SAFe, and I think if anything I would remove, that is not from the manifesto. SAFe is not the manifesto, but touching upon this is possibly SAFe in its current incarnation, at least, because it's deliberately making people focus too much on the processes. It's like they're sneaking in old waterfall hierarchy processing in the Agile world and relying on the SAFe to protect them. Well, it's in SAFe, so we're good to do that. So maybe that's what I would like to remove or replace with something which takes this larger grip. And the larger grip is then the value for the customer and the value for the business. And I think that is how we should look at scaling, not scaling just, another layer and so on, because that would, reproduce the hierarchy that we're trying to remove. Also, for that reason, I don't care about saving the future for managers. Managers and management is a tool to reach something, and it's a very efficient tool, for example, when you're building a hierarchical way of writing requirements and sending orders down the value pipe. It might be something that we need, but I'm just saying that it doesn't have a value in itself, so it doesn't need to be the focus of saving. Right. If we're left with managers, that's great, but the one way to scale that I would like to add then that captures innovation and an innovation culture, that is possibly a way to describe how to, in a self-organizing way, go from product development cross-functional teams to business development cross-functional organizations. That is, to me, the missing link that captures all of this, because that's a level where you get the focus of the market trends, the value for tomorrow's customers and so on, and also the business value itself. So that's the plus, the zero, and the minus on my side.
Very good. Thank you very much, Rikard. And Tommy, I think this was the first time you were described as a tool, isn't it? You don't have to respond to that, but you were the only one admitting to being a manager earlier in the conversation.
If I can comment, it bounced on myself as well. So I don't want to add non-value to an organization by contributing with my time.
Yeah, or even negative value. Let's talk about that, Rikard. Right. So thank you all. You all had a chance to share your initial thoughts. If I have to reflect, I hear a few themes. One is scaling is a challenge. That's at least one of the themes that I feel comes up in quite a few of your feedbacks. The other topic that has come up quite a bit, and I think Rikard was the most eloquent on this, is the notion of cross-functional teams that go beyond R&D, beyond product management, and try to touch the business value and value for customers inside the scope of a team. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that is quite interesting. It's incredibly interesting. The challenge that because I believe exactly, Rikard, that's where we need to go. What I am trying to figure out, and the gentleman from Volvo brought this up in his email, is for a large complex product, the contributions of the different teams have to come together in an integrated product in order to deliver that customer value. So how do we balance this? I mean, I remember talking to the company that Lena used to work for at some point in the past when she was a little younger. You're still very young, Lena. Where I remember that the web player basically was one product from a customer's perspective, but 5 different products with 5 different associated teams that were able to completely independently deliver their pieces to the web player that this company was developing. And I don't want to be too specific because this will go on the internet after this. So I think the company managed to solve the individual teams cross-functional that are able to deliver value to customers. and yet having an integrated product that brings together multiple teams. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing that I heard everyone talk about is it's about delivering customer value, and then business value is capturing some of that business value. But how do we model business value? Yeah, how do we actually know that we are delivering customer value? And I mean, traditionally they said, well, the customer says they're happy. Yeah, that's not good enough anymore. I think we need something much more elaborate than that. So what I was hoping to do is to open the floor for discussion for a couple of minutes, and then start to talk about what you would like to bring up in a future occasion, assuming that this is still sufficiently interesting and fun to spend some time on. And now it's free for all, so you can raise your hand and dive straight in. Willem, did you have a chance to say something?
No, I did not.
Oh, you were gone. Sorry about that, Willem.
That's okay, Jan. That's no problem. I don't feel set aside or something. The only thing that I was thinking about is that when you made your remark about the presents that you want to have your children want by Christmas,
yeah.
I also think that might not be very sustainable for the future anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're developing way too much things and very fancy stuff, features, hardware, you name it, while our environment cannot produce that anymore in the future. Yeah. So I'm a bit struggling with that sentence, what you were saying. Yeah.
Good. So let me quickly respond to that. One of the reasons that I'm pursuing digitalization so much is because I see a fundamental shift of value creation from the physical world to the digital world. And what we see is that the environmental impact of digital solutions, like a Spotify, for instance, just to mention one player, is much lower and is actually a major improvement over shipping millions of plastic discs around the world. And for those of you that used to use Netflix earlier, yeah, I lived in the US and I had Netflix, and what I would get was basically a DVD shipped to me every time that I had returned my old movie. Then I would get the next movie that was on my wish list. So there was a lot of physical transportation of small pieces of plastic, and now basically we just stream it over the internet. So the reason I believe, and I'm agreeing with you, Willem, that we have to be conscious of environmental sustainability as well as all the other forms of sustainability. But I believe that in many contexts, digital solutions and creating value through digital means actually is very positive from an environmental sustainability perspective rather than a negative. And that's why when I say I want my kids to get what or to want what I'm getting them for Christmas is more about how do I make my customers want those things instead of a truck with more plastic on it, yeah, like I don't know, maybe to switch to Uber instead of buying a Hummer or something like. Oh, my son works for Lyft. Lyft instead of buying a Hummer. Yeah, that's the kind of thinking that I'm looking for.
Thank you. That's a nice example. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. And then Dulce raised her hand, and she's still looking like she's thinking very, very hard.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking about, of course, we would like to measure how often the product or solution is used, right? And the thing is, how can we do that without causing a lot of work for the user? But then you get into this kind of dilemma regarding privacy and how to collect that data. And another thing is that even though we collect the data, we see that something is being used, but we actually don't know for what is being used. Right. So it could be that someone is using something for a completely different purpose than it actually was designed for. And that we would like to capture as well. So the question is, how can we do that?
I have two quick responses to that, which I find always fun. We've noticed that companies that start with fully qualitative, only talking to customers, by the time they start to get data, they move all the way to fully quantitative. Yeah, so they only measure quantitative data, and then they sit there staring at the data and they understand that they actually don't know what it means. And then they start to complement the quantitative data with the qualitative data, because otherwise it doesn't work. The second one, when about privacy and data privacy, when I worked for Intuit in the US, I was responsible for our MIT Media Lab relationship. I'm not sure if people know MIT Media Lab, but the people at Media Lab were curious how sensitive are people about privacy and storing and keeping their data safe. So they went out to a big mall with a big box of chocolates and a big sign that said, "Give us your password, get a free piece of chocolate." They had to get new chocolate 3 times because people kept throwing their passwords at them. So what I've noticed is that everyone worries about privacy from a kind of generic perspective. But when it becomes very specific, this is the data we would like to collect for these and these purposes, and you can trust us that we don't use it for anything else. In my experience, is a much better way. And one of the big problems that I see is, sorry, now I'm going all political because we need to start wrapping up. In Europe, GDPR, everyone is so scared of it that many companies are not collecting data of the type they could easily collect because it's anonymized or because customers give them free. And they could make much more data-driven decisions if they just were a little smarter about how they went about asking customers for their data. I mean, I know that all the big tech companies in the US, they are very simple. They say, either we can get your data and you can use our products, or you disagree and you can't use our products. Yeah, sucks to be you, as the saying goes. So that's the approach that they are taking, which I think is a little bit sad.